And we're in. Welcome back. Welcome to the Capacity Conversations episode 5. Oh my gosh. Um, every time I'm always amazed. Like,
We're doing it. We're making it. Yeah.
yeah. Where two women from each coast of the United States have challenging dialogue about self-trust, transformation, and the reality most modern millennials are facing today. Do we actually have the capacity to do all the things we want to do? If you're joining us for the first time, my name is Raquel Sands. I'm a clarity and work strategist, working with freedom seekers, what I like to call freedom seekers, people who are solopreneurs, freelancers, consultants, to create and sustain their peace, purpose, and prosperity on their terms. With me is my awesome, lovely co-host,
Sarah Liljegren. I'm in the business of rewilding real estate in the United States of America, and what that means in reconnecting with your I love that reconnecting with your land and yourself and your community and your village and the natural cycles that you are a part of, whether you know it or not.
So basically, we help you take the bacon and have the hearth, have the place to cook the bacon. I'm kidding.
Oh, recycling that. That's what I love. Every single ingredient to make that happen.
Exactly. So today, our topic is about survival. And we're going to get into soft skills, hard skills. We're going to kind of give the strategies and maybe some frameworks to help you all because we're millennials. We're trying to speak primarily to that demographic, but it doesn't have to be. We're just in this squishy place of what does survival look like? How do we transition? My God, my dog is choking on her own saliva. She's looking. Sorry. Okay. So yeah, we're going to get into some skills to not just get us from survival, because I think that's where we all are, is surviving. I mean, literally, maybe paycheck to paycheck, hand to mouth, but it's also how do we get out of that cycle, that, I don't know if negative, but that old cycle, and repurpose it, reuse it, do something new. So we're both gonna come with some awesome skills today. Today on my part, I'm gonna cover the soft skills, and some of the things that I wanted to talk about is a little bit of a segue from the last episode about zombies, just to kind of level set about survival. Like, are we surviving? How do we get out of this zombification, this kind of numbness? Because I feel like if we get on the same page about what does it mean to survive, like what are we doing, what is the current reality, what is the present moment? And I'm not trying to say that we're all zombies. Maybe we don't want to identify with that, but I feel like the truth of the matter is that we're living in a day and age that everything is very routine, and there's a status quo to things, and that could mean a lot of things. Like, you go to a certain work, you get income from that work, you live in a certain place, and you rinse, repeat. If that work doesn't work out, you go to another job. If that doesn't work out, you move somewhere else. But the whole thing is to stay in this system. Like, don't question the system. And so we're trying to survive and make the system work for us. And to do that, unfortunately, a lot of us, I feel, have lost this essence, this soulness, this aliveness, whatever you want to call it. And we talked about zombies in the previous episode, because zombies, we use that as this metaphor of not being dead, but not being alive. It's this limbo. I'm not Catholic, so maybe purgatory isn't the right synonym there, but it's just this unknown, like where are we? And so I feel like, unfortunately, we're all in this situation of we're not moving forward and we're not in the past. And so there's this stuckness. And the metaphor of the zombies is, they're consuming brains, whichever version of zombies we want to think about, because they're seeking meaning and nourishment. And the thought is they're not providing nourishment themselves, or they're not having it from within. It's this external, what is outside of me that will give me meaning. What is outside, like being in search of and never being satiated. So I just wanted to piggyback to kind of connect a little bit why we talked about zombies before and how that may be relevant in this episode. So I feel like when we talk about survival, it's talking about nourishment, talking about fulfilling needs and desires. And it's not just money, even though that's one of the things that consumes, pun intended, literally, our society, but it's like spiritual nourishment, emotional nourishment. So one of the strategies, or one of the things that I'm going to offer to everyone in this episode in terms of soft skills, is finding purpose. And purpose for me, I feels like a very lofty word. Oh my God, what's my purpose? And it feels so like, oh my God, that's the sentiment. It's so big and grandiose. But ultimately, I feel like purpose is about intention, and it doesn't have to be what you are right now forever. It's like, what is this season? Right now on the global north, we're in autumn, we're in the fall. So the season is calling quite literally for rest and hibernation and change and shedding of the old. And so if we're not in tune with that kind of the purpose of the season, of like where we are right now, then it gets hard, because it's like we're fighting that, swimming against the current. And so I offer purpose, not finding your end all purpose, but like, what is get curious. What is your interests, your desires? What are the things that make you feel alive that maybe you haven't been able to do, or haven't been able to express? Or like an example is, both of us are solopreneurs. And so I feel like both of us have been getting out of the 9 to 5 and in the corporate systems in certain ways. And so the purpose for us, I mean, I don't want to, you please speak. I don't want to speak for you, Sarah, but it's like, there's this recognition within ourselves that mold structure no longer serves us. And so now we're stepping into a new purpose, intentionality. And it could be vice versa too, I'm sure.
I think, I mean, I that word solopreneur, even though I feel like I identify with it, there's this little thought that immediately popped up in my head that was like, there's no such thing as solopreneur. And there absolutely is. And I think you hit the nail on the head with the way we relate to our work, as like we are coming alive by finding our own purpose, which doesn't fit the mold of a 9 to 5. And it is quite lonely knowing that your purpose is your own. And I think that has been scary for me. I don't know. And but still the success of it requires working in collaboration with others in whatever form that takes. And I think helping other people come into their purpose is just as rewarding as it is to work in a team where security is the highest value, as opposed to finding your individual or individuated purpose.
100%. 100%. Yeah, 100%. And I love that, because that's the other thing. Like, not all of us, I feel like I read somewhere, I saw it in some video, not everybody should be or could be or wants to be in business, and vice versa. Not everybody wants or could be or should, like whatever, in a 9 to 5. And I also want to say, going into that seasonality of it, I'm not trying to advocate that, speaking for myself, I'm going to be in business forever, because I don't know. Right now, I'm 33, and this is the path for me, and the path that I choose. But who knows, in 5-6 years, I'm like, you know what? I do want structure, or I do want to work gigs, or whatever it is. So I start with purpose, because I feel like if we're zombies, if we're mindless, if we're feeling numb, then coming back to a reason, a sense of intention, whether it's temporary or long-term, it can kind of cultivate that spark of like, oh, this could trigger something else, and that could trigger, and it can blossom this whole sense of meaning that, instead of, at least for me, money hasn't been meaningful for me. It's not something, I think, a common denominator in my life that I just like, you can't pay me enough to just sit there
Mhm.
do Excel. And I'm not trying to be crass or, to each their own, but just for me, it's not been. So it's like finding our own sense of meaning.
And finding it apart from money, I think, because you were speaking, the first thing you said was like the routine and the status
Yeah.
quo of our modern society. And we have been conditioned, and I think we spoke to this last time, is like the ability to see money in our environment, our ability to see, or maybe this was in our own chat, because I was like, why are we so good at like foraging and hunting for financial gain, but we have no ecological literacy for what kind of species that is? Or we see a certain species come up in our environment and that in no way connects us to the season, or like the indicator that the seasons are changing, or that when this species does this, then this will happen. We have no skill for that, but we are somehow very, very skilled at seeing economic opportunity. So I think even if 9 to 5, like you said, 10 years from now, you might be like, I want the security and routine of a corporate gig, so I'm going to go back to that. That's still your purpose. If you feel like that is your aliveness calling to you, saying, this is what's right for me now. That connection of, oh, I don't like, I saw this quote, an agent I work with says, like, what you are not changing, you're choosing. And so if you don't like your situation and you're not actively working toward what you do want in life, I think that's the trap of the routine and status quo, where even in that situation, that same situation, if you're not there out of choice, then you're not free. If you're not there with your own capacity and awareness and in some sense freedom to choose what you, even if it, I mean, I'm in a corporate job right now and I chose it to get out of financial debt. And even though I'm like almost there and I grind against it mentally sometimes. And I really, when I come back to my true center, I'm like, this is good for me. This is good for me. And on the days that I feel like it's bad, I don't know. I don't mean to tangent and ramble on about that. But when you said, like, I just love that, because it all fits really. But what you are alive with is the purpose of your life and our individualization versus individuation. I think this is an interesting topic right now too. Not in our conversation, but I'm seeing more people talk about like the dangers of the individualization of our culture and the importance of realizing that what we are actually striving for perhaps is an individuated experience, not an isolated, individualized experience. So,
oh my gosh, that was
the village.
It was like there's another part that the second soft skill, but I'm like, I don't want to get there. I wanted to make a quick note that before we hopped on, I was thinking to myself, but what if we don't know what our interests are? Or what if we're because we're zombies? I mean, if you want to take that on, that you're a zombie, I'm a zombie sometimes, then it's like, where do I even start? And so I don't know if you all have heard the band Paramore from the 2000s. And so I was telling Sarah, I put myself through this HIIT workout this morning, and I was listening to Paramore. I was feeling very grunge, punk, and there was this aliveness in the moment of nostalgia. And I was remembering myself years back. And I know that, now in 2025, there is this real like resurgence of 90s stuff. I see people wearing chokers and the baggy pants, and I'm like, okay, I'm here for it. And what I'm saying is, like, if we don't even have an idea of what our future could be or what is happening in the present, maybe we can take cues from our past. What are past things that we were interested in? What are past things that lit us up? Not to say that has to be the main thing, but it's like sometimes I go back to painting, or I go back to a favorite book of mine. I reread it, and that can inspire something. And so that's just to say, no pressure for the people listening of like, where am I supposed to find my purpose? What am I supposed to do? Go back, like it's okay to retrace our steps and see what we did in the previous chapters of our lives, in the previous iterations of ourselves, and gather inspiration. And maybe, you know, it triggers something. If not, then we sit with that and we're like, okay, you know, maybe I'm not interested in the past versions or my present version. So it's time for a new badass version. So something that Sarah hit on that was beautiful segue for, I was like, we're aligned. We're always aligned. Was, I know, I was my second soft skill, and this may sound, I mean, we're in spooky season, so I'm just going to be dramatic. It's death. It's death. And the reason I say death is because if we are zombies, then we are undead. There's a part of us that needs to die, that needs to surrender, and we need to let go. We need to shed in order to fully embrace, be open to whatever else. I think there's like this quote in Zen Buddhism or something of like, somebody goes to the teacher and he gives his cup and the cup is already full. And then the teacher's like, I can't pour more into your cup because it's full. And so I say that because when you were saying, Sarah, about choice, it's like what came to my mind was the soft skill of death, of like, we need to choose to let things go. We need to choose to change. And that choice, it's so challenging because I feel like, you know, at least for me, some things that might come up are, but I didn't choose this life. Like I didn't choose to have to be between a job and a business. Like I'm not trying to choose. I just want to live life. And while that is frustrating, and it's true, and I'm sure it's true for most of us, we have a choice in how we show up for ourselves, how we show up in others, for others. We have a choice in, I watched last night, we went to see this Keanu Reeves movie. He's an angel in the movie. I forget what it's called. And the guy that he helps is frustrated because he sleeps in his car. He's just trying to make his ends meet, got a college degree. And at the end, the whole premise of the movie is like, you could have any life, you know, if X solved the equation, maybe that would solve some of your problems, but ultimately you get to live your life, like your individuation, your essence, your purpose. Because in the movie, he swapped lives, kind of like a Freaky Friday thing with somebody who had a lot of money. And yeah, money solved his problems. But the soul, the essence, the meaning, the intentionality was lost because all his previous connections from his other life were gone. The partner, the synchronicity, like all these things. And I'm not trying to be blasé of like, you know, endure the suck, because the suck is great. I mean, it can be, it is, it's what strengthens us. It's what, you know, I mean, I was just telling Sarah, I don't like to do HIIT workout, but I know that that's good for me. And I know that challenge is going to make my body, my lungs stronger. And I can choose to take it as a meditation, take it as a balm, a medicine for my body. Like I'm helping my body in the long run, just doing this one thing. So I say that because ultimately I feel like death is something that we avoid in our society, or it's not talked about. It's very like, you know, it's avoided in all the medical systems. I even feel like, let's live forever. Let's, you know, not get wrinkles. Let's, you know, not get gray hair. But that is life. And so we're not trying to be zombies. We don't want to be undead. We do. I mean, this might be grading, but I do want to die one day. I don't want to live forever. This is a conversation I talked to with my husband. Like, what would I do with 300 years of life? You know, like I love vampires. And I think to myself, what do you do with all that? Like, you're not even living, because the whole point of life is the end, that it's this fragile, this tender, like temporary thing. And so, I'm going to pause, because if not, I'm going to get into my whole spiel. Sarah, do you have anything before
the love of our lives? I don't know. I think of love as being this incarnate it's more than an emotion. It's like this expression. It's like this, the great mystery that flows through all living things. And I think that's what I think of when you think about when you're talking about the end is what makes that meaningful. And with just, and because I think that's also the veil of the zombie, is that none of it's really meaningful. And I think that's a state of being that it's hard to see when you're in that mode, that your life is so short. I mean, we are both 33 now. This is on paper like middle age for our country, like mid 60s, where people are getting sick, chronic illness. That's like geriatric. You're just at more risk for like all the viruses that are going around now, right? And so most people our age, though, are very disillusioned and depressed and anxious and medicated and also perhaps chronically ill and don't have, and then maybe that veil, like I mentioned with the zombification, some layers of that come into our lives so early. And I think the technology addictions is, I say technology and addiction, like, I mean, that's very part of that layer of gray, that it's just so easy to miss that incarnate, regenerative, reciprocal love that really is what wants to be bursting from our pores and received and given by the people around us, with and to induce a sense of safety and trust. That magic is really hard to miss. Don't recognize that life is very, very short. And maybe there is some aspect of, like, you think your consciousness is going to live for 1,000 years because that's like what our minds are plugged into, which is this eternal landscape of the internet. So I think it's very confusing, honestly. And like just the idea of death. Most young people aren't even exposed to like funerals. We don't have like rites of passage into the next life anymore, other than funerals, really. And if you're not exposed to that, what ceremonies do you have in your community to help you tie into your own short life and recognize that I'm going to do this thing that calls to me, or this message that I keep hearing for me? I don't know. It's like missing out on love if you don't recognize that death is such an important part of the process to rebirth, because you can go through those cycles yourself to find purpose.
Oh my gosh, there were some beautiful things that I just got from listening to. I mean, the whole thing is beautiful. Don't get me wrong. The whole thing is beautiful. I'm not saying that. A couple things. I'm like, the things that are like blaring in my mind, but the whole thing, we highlight, we underline everything. Oh my gosh. One of the things that came to mind for me as you were speaking was taboo, how death is like on the outskirts of society. And then I thought about sex and all these other things that society considers taboo. And then what I thought is the things that are taboo could be considered the things that bring more meaning. Like, I know that as a woman, talking about sex and intimacy, and it doesn't have to be orgasm. It's like feeling good in your body, embodying your sensuality, whatever that looks like. And it could be a mental intimacy. Like, it's not just a physical, it could be a whole, I'm trying to think of the breath too, so that everyone feels seen and heard. But it's like the things that society, I don't know how cynical we want to be, but like could be by design removing us from the things that give us meaning, you know, intimacy with another person, mourning that person. Like, these are things that if we had them, and I love that you said community and village, because the other thought that came to me is I always have this observance with, because my family is from Latin America and my husband is from Latin America, so we're just Latino family here. And there's this interesting paradigm of those of us born and raised in the US, how we adopt this culture. And I'm not saying that everybody in the US has this culture, but you live with your nuclear family until a certain age, and then you live your life. Maybe it's college, maybe it's whatever, and then you go set up your new family with kids, with whatever, and then you may or may not have ties with your nuclear family that you grew up with. So it could become a greater component community, or you just do your thing with your new family and then you do the things with that family. Like, this is something that I've observed in my family. Like, I have an uncle who's the only one of my family who was born in LA, and he married a Canadian lady, and they're great. I'm not saying no, they're great, but it's like they do their own thing with their family. Like, everything is with her family, or like their own thing that they've set up. And so, like, he's my mom's brother. He's my uncle on my mom's side. And so there's really no connection with, I remember growing up with him. He was one of my favorite uncles that gave me roller skates and like noogies, if you know, like all these things. And since I was little, there's just been this huge divide. He made his own life. He did his own thing. And I'm not saying it's maliciously. He chose to make a new life, whether it was unconscious or not. But there's this divide. And I feel like the sense of community of what we had before, he's creating a new one for himself. But then it creates this disconnect, literal disconnect of when my grandma passed away last year. If he wasn't connected with my mom, he wouldn't have known that his mom was passing away, even though they're in the same state. He was in Orlando and I grew up in West Palm. It's like 5 hours. Florida's big. And he wouldn't have known in the same state. And we're here in Northern Virginia, but because my mom is very much in contact with her sister, my aunt, who lives with my grandma in the same space, they knew. So I just say that it's really interesting community building in the new era, because it's like, even though we're all from the same culture, in theory, the way we propagate it, the way we change it, transform it, versus my husband's family, 3 generations live in the same house. His mom, his sister, and her kids. And so the kids grew up with grandma, and the grandma is, I mean, she loves to be a nanny, I'm sure. She gets this joy of being with her family. And also the structure is different. She's retired, doesn't have to work. The house is completely paid for. And so they can just keep adding on, or, in that vessel, in that home. And so I didn't really have a big comment to say, besides that I feel like as we get untethered within our communities, the ability for the taboo stuff, for the meaning, talking about intimacy and death, it gets harder. So I feel like when going back to purpose for a minute, maybe that's another suggestion, is like how can we tap into the things that feel like, they say in, I think, the spiritual world, the shadow work, the unconscious, the taboo. How do we tap into the things that are uncomfortable as another vehicle for meaning, for making meaning? So yeah, I'm gonna pause there before I tap into the last soft skill. So just to
I don't know. I noticed my own face, and I was like sitting here, and then I noticed my own face, and I'm like, oh wow, I look grumpy. And because I was really thinking about what you were saying, and it's the same pattern in my family, Raquel. That is wild, because I'm like, oh, so that lays it out. And I'm so curious if anyone else has this example where, like, my aunties are like the Instagram of our family, and we know that, like, maybe not Instagram, I don't know, like, but like the social media network of our family, and that's how news travels. I mean, I have not lived proximity wise very close to much of my extended family throughout my life, so it was somewhat of a natural way to keep in touch with all of my cousins and aunts. But I feel like I could tangent on right now too about, like, the invisible structures that are lives. And I think about real estate. That's the first thing that comes into my mind, because it's part of the invisible structure of our society that helps us unconsciously form our values and our connections. And because it is routine and normal for our families to separate the way you were describing, that generational wealth, we can't get away from it. I think when I first started studying real estate, I was like, there's got to be these other vehicles for generational wealth, and there is, but real estate is really the only one left where, like, the middle class, the lower class, you have access to build something. And having a house that's paid off where multiple people can live. And if you have 4, 5, 6 incomes living in a house that's paid off, talk about generational wealth. Like, talk about ways that you can step forward, like make the next move for your family. And you take that income and you buy more assets that bring in more streams of income for your family in one generation. That's what you have to do. And I say all that from like a financial aspect, but what I was really hearing when you were describing that pattern in your family and recognizing it within mine is, I live states away from my parents, and there is just this relationship that, like, I left as an 18-year-old, right? I moved out of the house. But living even further away, I'm like, there is this just given understanding, even in my own mind, that like we're supposed to give these up. And maybe it's because I didn't grow up with the grandparents in the house or even that close by, but it doesn't have to be a given, you know? And then maybe it is, like, as a white woman in a white family from white small town America, we see multi-generational Latina families of other cultures, and we almost see it as like a cultural divide, like, oh, that's just different from how we do things. And I'm ready to blur those lines, because that's what's happening right now in our day and age. Like, everything is blurred. All the lines are blurred. It's time to pick out what is serving us, and, like you said, intentionally let go what isn't. And I think, I don't know, I could get into, like, I don't want to even say the words like white supremacy, but like that's the cultural divide that I just mentioned is like, it doesn't have to be a cultural divide. It doesn't have to be about race. It doesn't have to be about money. It doesn't have to be about any of those things other than what is good for the village, I will say. And we can have a blended village, and we can have family we choose, blood relations, shared, like, finances versus like, what is the intention of your life, and what are you bringing together, and what kind of household do you want to live in? And maybe you don't want to build generational wealth. Maybe you just don't care. You don't have kids, and you don't, or, I don't know, Justin, before my husband and I decided to have kids, we don't yet, and we would like to adopt, but we don't know if that's going to happen. I know. And but we thought, even when we were dead set on not having kids, we still wanted to create like a retirement fund so that we could gift it when we died, you know. And now that if we have kids, like, that would be a nice legacy too. But the desire to leave something behind isn't, I don't think, shared by everybody. I don't know. I think that's my ramble on what it's what it makes you alive, what brings you purpose, what brings you meaning. Like,
I love that. Oh my gosh, there's so much
survival.
Again, we love everything. I can't choose. I just oh no, please.
Well, it's funny because survival's the talk, you know, like the theme, and it's like, that's funny that we're talking, like, we keep it's loving life. You know, it's funny that we're like, I love all that on this topic, because it's all the things that we're talking about we need to survive, not just thrive, but like these psychological needs of meaning. I think it's easy to think we don't need it when you don't have it, and you are surviving day to day without it, because you tell yourself that that's what you have to do, and that works for a time, and then there's a time where it doesn't work anymore.
That's right. No, my God, that's so beautiful. There are a couple of things that I also wanted to add, and then I'll do my last, the third soft skill that I wanted to present. Was that, one, we've had this talk with my husband, because he grew up in that sort of household, and I grew up just with my parents. I'm an only child, but I remember the big gatherings, like in Christmas and stuff. All the family, my uncles, aunts would come.
Yeah.
I mean, literally, I mean, I'm sure that there are more Latinos, the more like the Latino to the 10th version. But I remember my grandpa having his chickens, his roosters in the backyard, and we're just running around and Christmas. And you know, there's a couple things that facilitated that. Was that we were all in Florida. My parents had a home, 2-3 bedroom home. My grandparents had a 2-3 bedroom home, so we could actually house, you know, our extended family and have a center, kind of a gravity. And as time went on, as I said, my uncle, who's from LA, he did his own thing. But I feel like it become like, I love that you said it continues to be a choice, because even though my uncle was the only one born here, but he could have chosen, like I did. I'm born here, and I married a Peruvian immigrant. Like I chose to lean in a certain direction. Not that I haven't dated other races or whatever, but I made a choice for my own legacy, for my own path. And I'm like, I want somebody that can speak Spanish too, and that gets my
Yeah.
things.
Yeah.
Even though I will speak Spanglish in a different way, but I made a choice. So I say that because we've talked about it with my husband. Like, even when we do trips, and sometimes his family will be like, do you want to do a group trip to the beach? And in my mind, I'm like, no, alarm, because because in my mind, I start to think, like some of the experiences I had in college with friends, like, oh my gosh, I give up autonomy because I have to be in the same car with a whole group of people. And what if I want to leave at a certain time? Or what if I just want my own peace of mind for a minute, and then my energy is mixed, commingled with everyone else's energy? And what if I don't want to stay where they want to stay, or I don't want to have the experiences they want to have? So all of this is to say that my husband and I have been thinking about this. Like, we like proximity. We definitely want to be close to our people and community, but we don't want to be the center of it. We don't want to be the matriarch, patriarch that has to hold it down. So it's interesting, again, like the purpose, the choice, you know, we get to choose at any iteration what this looks and feels like for us. And I will say one other thing that came up in my mind about my mother-in-law's house situation is, it's interesting. I feel like the different problems we have globally, like if I were to draw a line, the global north and the global south, there's in the news, in the media, and historically, there's just so much political, civic unrest in the African continent, in Latin America, in Asia, I'm sure as well, in these places that have been gorged out, you know, their resources removed. And so it's like they have to live in that way because they can't, some of them are not literate. You know, the metric of success, the path to success looks differently for them. Like, I remember going, my half sister is also from Central America. She's from Nicaragua. My family is from El Salvador. And going to these countries, you will just see people lay down a towel in the middle of, like, let's say the hub, and they're selling the jewelry they make or whatever it is. And then tourists come and they're like, oh my God, this is, you know, natural, whatever it is, authentic. And that, you know, you don't need a permit, I'm sure. You just hang out, do whatever you need to do, make your money for that day, and you go home. But it's not this guaranteed, like, even at Uber, I'm sure, or whatever it is, Chipotle, you will get paid for your time. You have to be legal. There are certain systems. And so I'm just, while it looks like there's stability in one effort, community, family, the system at large politically is very upended, versus here, we don't have that community structure, but we do have perhaps a longer lasting political structure. And so it's easier to get success, which is why I feel like so many people from the South, anywhere in the South, I'm talking about immigrants from Africa, from Latin America, come here because they want that structure that they don't have. And yet we want that, or I'll speak for myself, I want that structure that I don't have. So it's just interesting. It's like the yin yang. We're both missing something. So I just wanted to add that. But the last thing, framework, soft skill, and then I will pass it on to Sarah, is let me scroll down, is prosperity. And I named it prosperity because it's not something that we're looking for. So maybe it's not a skill. Maybe I just don't say it as a skill. It's for me, it's not a skill. It's like an awareness, maybe, that prosperity isn't money, or it could be, but it's like redefining. And number two, prosperity comes, I feel, when we get the other two dialed in, when we get intentional with, okay, what is it that we want? What purpose? What's our thing right now? And then death, the presence. Like, are we open to letting things go? Are we open to rebirth? So when 1 + 1 = 2, then we get prosperity, that two, that outcome, that result, which we get to redefine. What does it look like to be prosperous? What does it look like to feel successful, feel supported, feel sovereign, have autonomy, agency? Because I feel like in our society, there's this immediate notion that wealth equals money, that making a certain amount of money, you'll be successful. If you continue to make that money over your lifetime, then you will have this hoard of wealth, with this amount of wealth, and that will save you. That will be your safety net for years, decades to come. And that's not necessarily untrue, but I just feel like when we think about prosperity as money, it feels so limiting. It doesn't expand into all the other areas that we are. So it kind of forces us to negate all that we are when we're just looking at prosperity as money. It's like, well, what about your emotional wealth and your spiritual health and your, so maybe it's not necessarily a skill so much as just redefining it, and like the awareness of, as I think about my purpose and the season of life I'm in, as I am willing to let go. We talked about death and getting more intimate with myself, learning about myself. Then am I open to success, wealth, prosperity in whatever shape, form that is? Or is there a certain nourishment? Is there a certain metric of success, wealth that we need? Like, at least for me, I love, and my husband knows, the biggest item on our budget for me is food and vitamins, because I'm like, I want to eat good and I want to feel good with what I'm eating. And I'm happy to indulge and give my body all the nutrients, nourishments. Like right now I'm drinking a bone broth because I know that I don't like protein powder. And I've read that bone broth is really good because of all the juices and it's warm, and I'm not a big coffee drinker, so it's just something soothing for me. So I'm happy to drink as much bone broth as I want to nourish my body, my soul. So that's my last one, was prosperity and rethinking, because I feel like as we talk about survival, well, it's not money. And if as we open ourselves up, that it's not just money, it's like, oh shit, then if it doesn't have to be just money, then we're more open to whatever pathways and whatever nutrient, like whatever, we're more open, and that produces more aliveness and more curiosity. So yeah, that was my last one.
Oh, beautiful. Oh my gosh. We're always, I mean, I know we have planning sessions to like synthesize on these themes, but I feel like it's for me to like really it's like a meditation. And I'm glad that's kind of, hopefully other people, if you're listening to all of these or even just the full one episode, that it is kind of a meditation into one aspect of our human experience and our capacity to really deepen into meaning and connection and purpose and abundance, which we are in the context of survival. It's really important to think about survival skills and things that we need to survive. But you didn't say abundance, you said prosperity.
Mm.
Have you done any etymology on that word? I know you like to see the root words.
Yes. Let me pull it up right now because I didn't have it in my notes.
To prosper.
It says the word's origin is the Latin prosperous, meaning favorable or successful. It comes from the verb prosperare, to cause to succeed. And that's interesting because like sometimes when I read the etymology, even the way they are explaining it, to cause to succeed, for me sounds like choice. Like we're choosing to be open to allow things. And I feel like, this was one point I had in my notes is, when we think about human being, that the word being is not just this noun of this status, this state of neutrality. It's a verb. It's like we are existing, we are moving, we're trying, we're doing things. And I say that because if we're trying to not be zombies, that means that, at least for me, we're not staying in the same numbless, mindless state. We're provoking things. We're poking ourselves. We're poking the world. We're creating gumbo. We're putting different things in it. I know. It's one of my favorite things.
Well, the metaphor like clicks there, right? It's like,
right,
it's all about time. It's all about the time and.
True,
and
yeah.
I just looked up the root word of success too, just because to cause success and.
Yeah.
The first, like the 1530s, first, I guess, time. Oh, funny. I'm not going to read that. It was a different thing. But result, outcome, or termination of an affair. So accomplishment of a desired end, like something happened and it has concluded and that thing was good. And I think that's an interesting, like, because these 15th, 16th, 17th century succession, order of sequence, there's something about like that it is good because it's like the finite aspect of life, how we were talking about with death. That's what I'm thinking of now. It's like you almost can't. This is why the whole deathbed meditation is so powerful to me, because if you were thinking about what you were reflecting on your life as if I were 70 years older than I am now. 70, 80, 90. Wow, I'm 103. Oh my God. And I did my whole life. And I'm thinking back on the things that were the most meaningful, the most beautiful. Maybe the things we didn't do is what some people say. And so the encouragement is, if you have a death meditation, or if you go through that process of, and I've heard people say that if you've gone through a very close death in your life, might not be a good time to do a death meditation. But if you feel resilient enough to really think about the finite aspect of your life, think about what you want to leave behind, even if it's just like the emotional impact, right? Actually, we were just talking about a fiction book before we started, called Speaker of the Dead. And just the name probably tells you some of what the book is about. I just finished it recently. I was recommending it to Raquel and everyone who's listening. But the whole Ender's Game fantasy series, wonderful. I've only listened to 2 so far. Anyway, that's not my point. My point is that book, the author, I was listening to him talk about Orson Scott Card, why he wrote that story. And he's like, wouldn't it be interesting? Because he said what he noticed was that when we go to funerals, what do? We lie. And not always, but we, even like a crappy human being, right? You go to their funeral and what do you hear? The wonderful, like they were a wonderful person. They were blah, 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 blah. And his point was like, he went to a funeral and was watching someone grieve for this person, but he was looking at the situation, like, but this person who's grieving was also deeply abused by the person who died. So this paradox of what's true, and I guess his point was like, that's almost like vengeance in a way of that person who died. That's no longer their story. That abuse is now covered up by this new story. And I guess I don't know. I'm getting wrapped in all of the different tethers of stories here, because I was just so impacted by this story lately of the truth, and the idea of the truth being a powerful force in life, so that when you leave, so that even when you leave, the hopefully positive stories that are left behind, or the impacts that are left behind, are positive and are also true when they're told. So that's kind of like the emotional psychological survival aspect. But I, as a survival lady, and for my birthday recently, I did a 3-day road trip, like solo road trip, where I tried to just get out in the woods by myself, but I ended up driving more miles than I was expecting. So I was in my car for a lot. But by the third night, I camped in the woods, and there was one other couple in this campground I was in. But there was still this feeling of isolation out in the wild. And it wasn't that wild, right? Because it was a campground. But I didn't know anyone around for hundreds of, I was out in Montana, so I don't live there. And I had a weapon on me. I felt like I was prepared. I was defending. I could, like, if a bear showed up, like, I was prepared. And so still the fear, and I made a fire, and I had this little hand chainsaw like tool, and so I made my own logs, and the feeling of being able to support myself was one I needed to be reminded that I could do. And so my solo time was like a rite of passage for me as I went into another year of my life, of saying, I'm really good at surviving, and not just to be reminded that I can have all the tools and the wherewithal to not only survive, but for me, it was also a question of what's next too, because I need the space. I just can't, like I said, I have it's actually an 8 to 5 Monday through Friday job, corporate office job. So it's very heady and busy. And so I honestly have doing it for a year. It's like, I have forgotten a little bit of what that like magical, because I have other jobs that, bless you, keep me outside and working with kids or working with elders, and it's just a different environment. And I've noticed that it's harder to kind of hold on to that sense of like individuation, because I'm a part of something big and complex and busy, and it's busy and it's loud and it's in my face and it's constant. It's 5 days a week, 9 hours at least of my day I dedicate to this like thing. And my survival skills, I love, Raquel, that you share these 3 soft skills. And as you were talking, I'm like, I bet I could like synthesize it all into 3 things, and that way we can work through it. Because my list, I have coming from a survival aspect, because like I mentioned earlier, the rewilding aspect of real estate, it's not only this invisible, well, it's not invisible because it's the literal structure of your community, my community, that's telling us you will live like this. And then there's little boundaries, and there's roads, there's zoning. Zoning is the invisible force that rules all of our lives. And yeah, I know. But oh my gosh, where I was going with that.
You're gonna tell us how to burn it all down. I'm kidding.
Well, I have this huge question. Okay. Something in our planning session that you said, Raquel, that I wrote down in all caps in my notes was, why can't we just live out here?
Oh, yes.
And the power of seeing seeing that invisible force, like understanding zoning. And I'm not saying everyone needs to understand real estate and financing and zoning. I'm very, very, very interested and curious in all of those factors because it so profoundly relates to these psychological needs that we are speaking to. So the sections of survival that I have to get back to later, like how can we live here? So we have our physiological needs, air, oxygen, water, nutrition, shelter. I mentioned the 5 C's of survival last time, like the shelter and even clothing and warmth is part of the cover. But just to recap, if you didn't listen to the last one, the 5 C's of survival, combustion, so like a fire, heat, a way to heat yourself, cover, that's shelter, clothes, house, cutting, so something to cut, either food, tools, wood, likely, container, if you have a way to capture water, you can't store it in your hands. I mean, you can in the moment, but if you want to keep it and not like, anyway, you walk a mile to the spring and then back to the camp, figure out a way to preserve your water. And then cordage, something to hold either the tools that you're harvesting or hold your structure together, your house, or your cover. And so the shelter, clothing, warmth, and then sleep, rest. Not to be underestimated, like the whole party exists on our ability to repair ourselves. So that I just want to highlight that actually, because most Americans are under rested. They're sleep deprived. I mentioned like my busy corporate life. If I had 2, 3 little kids, and I work with a lot of people who do what I do with kids, young people, and I'm like, this is amazing. How do you, like, I feel like I can barely show up to work. Like, I got the gym in the morning and I got to come home and I got to, and thankfully I don't have to water my garden in the morning anymore, but like adding all these little things, and I would have chosen kids over a garden, I suppose. But like the point is, it's so full. And if you're doing it all while sleep deprived, it's very hard to even see the way, like your own needs. So aside from your physical needs, being resourced enough to identify your safety and security needs. So again, your physical safety, that's why I like over and over and over with my talk on the village, and like the internal real estate, getting oriented in your own perspective and your heart and your connection, is your ability to induce trust and safety within your environment, because it is a choice. Like you said, prosperity, there's some aspect of choosing to cause success, meaning a thing that has come to an end and it was good. So at the end of not just a lifetime, but at the end of a day, at the end of a month, at the end of every new moon, every cycle, whether every season, can you step back and say, is this a safe place to be? And not just from physical harm in your environment, but even like natural disasters. So Justin and I talk about moving to Alaska, and there was recently like the typhoon, God, was it Japan or somewhere, but the waters made it to Alaska and flooded a lot of little, I don't know actually about how many people it affected. I think hundreds were displaced, but I only saw like one person died, and I hope it wasn't more than that, but I don't know. But just that idea of like, wait a minute, do we want to live in a tsunami zone? Do I want to live? I mean, I was over on the Seattle side, and the Juan de Fuca plate is for a shift. And if that happens, and depending on the time of year it happens, there's so many cascading effects that could leave Portland underwater, Seattle underwater. And like, those are, I mean, that's why I like nationalist studies, man. It like brings me up from the day-to-day, like, oh, my computer, my email is just so important. But it's also like, the volcano erupting next door is so important, freedom from not only violence, but disaster. You can only do so much. There's more and more natural disasters I feel like we're even becoming aware of. So you can only do so much, not to scare everyone, but like the last ice age, just the floods even that came through here, that was my road trip for my birthday, was to track the Missoula flood lines and to see at the end of the last ice age, there several floods, but from Missoula out to the ocean, and it carved a lot of the landscape through here. I'm in Eastern Washington, so fascinating stuff. But if there were humans alive at that time, well, where there were, but like depending on where they were in the landscape, there's just no stopping disasters like that. I'm going full into disasters, but like that's
But it's true.
Oh, yeah.
It's true. Yeah, it's
Living
true.
in
It's
Missouri.
like when things are happening to you, and there's always that thing: is it happening for you? Is it But it's like we can only control so much. So it's being centered enough in ourselves and being prepared enough, knowing our strategies and arming ourselves literally, so that when things do change externally, not necessarily internally, we can mitigate.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Safety and security. Same with that same aspect with stability, your access to stability and resources, health and sanitation. And those things, I think, are one reason, well, several reasons within that little category of why people choose to move to cities. So I guess I'll finish this list and then I'll come back to cities because I have a big thing on cities. Okay. Social and emotional needs. So humans are social beings. Isolation is a punishment. When I think that is when we are living, it's 2025, in the short aftermath of a global shutdown. Isolation caused a lot of issues. We are still feeling the effects of that today. Children, I brought this up in previous episodes, and I will probably continue to bring it up. But children's suicide rates, youth suicide rates, are skyrocketing right now, and that is absolutely something to pay attention to. And same with elders. I mean, I was hearing about elders during isolation, and people on life support saying like, "Take me off." And I don't know. Some of this could have been, again, propaganda. The propaganda machine,
Right.
but that was so I could, the hearing people's account saying, if I can't interact with my family, why am I here? But again, earlier, like we were saying, some people that they value family in a different way and they value place in a different way, like where they are. So emotional needs, love and belonging, communication. That's a whole rabbit hole. We should spend a whole episode just on communication and what that means. But that's a big skill for surviving in the village. And sense of purpose and cooperation to a group. So back to what you said is your sense of purpose as a person and individual, but also where you want to be and what environment you want to be in.
Wow.
So autonomy, meaning, learning, creativity, stimulation, things that push us. I actually think it's really interesting that learning and creativity came up as a self-fulfillment and psychological need, because the stimulation and access to creativity, I hear so many people, and maybe it's because I work like it's in the business setting, people are like, I'm just not creative, but I'm also their marketing manager. So they're like, you do all your jazzy creative things and make it look good. And I get that. I know how to do that, but it bothers me sometimes how many people say, I'm just not creative like you, or I'm just not creative, or I don't have that ability, or I'm not artsy. And I think the beauty is, and you can identify you're orderly or beautiful, and you acknowledge you have the ability to create that as well, and that you do have the power and the sovereignty to create yourself, then you also can tap into that creative power, because it's a creation. It's your ability to create. So going back to villages, that's kind of the big categories, but separation into survival and to live well. And like you said, the global south and north line, like that equator of why do people come to the United States of America? We're like the propaganda machine. This is a shit show right now, and people are still moving.
Imagine.
And why? I think because they are in the survival. I'm not going to go up and down, but I guess it is like your survival and then the living well. And you just get to choose at some on some level, what you want to do in this life. So
Yeah.
going back to the village, like I was saying, and cities. I think a big reason people move to cities, and like even moving to America, moving to places with more resources, is that stability aspect.
Yeah.
And once you have that, your creative power actually is more likely to come online. So if you're completely shut off from that creation aspect in yourself, it might be worth asking, well, and what am I putting so much energy into? And maybe it is just to survive, and that's okay. And you can get to a point where you feel more stable and more well-resourced. My question, though, is do people really need to move to cities to do that? I think when people are escaping civil unrest, war, bombings, move to a place, natural disasters, move to a place that's safer. You need to survive. I want people to survive and not just accept like a lot of die here. I don't know. I think there's also that aspect too, a little bit of like I want to root for humans, and not everyone wants us to survive. You know, not everyone's like, go humans, you got this. A lot of people, that's just a mentality that really bothers me. Like, I think if I start talking about it too much, I might get anxious, because there's this like this like self-hatred where we almost don't want our own species to survive. Like I was talking about the floods coming through earlier, I wonder, I mean, I've even worked with kids who have had that like, yeah, wipe them all out kind of mentality, like take the humans out, nature will be better without us, nature thrives without us, because they saw in isolation and COVID and the pandemic, the skies got clearer, the air got clearer, the water got clearer. And then I heard an interesting actually article that came out this year about one of the reasons the coral reefs and the oceans probably got cleaner while humans weren't swimming in them was because of our sunscreen. Not our presence. So I think that's an interesting thing. Like it's so easy to see. It's the data versus interpretation, which is another huge skill, and it's a part of the communication skills that like I still in my marriage find like, hold up, I'm telling stories in my head because I'm looking at data and I'm interpreting it in my own mind, and it's so hard because you have decades of experiences and stories and your human needs of like sorting out your situation and trying to analyze it, and then you see data and you're like, I know what that means, and you overlay it onto everything that was you, and you can't quite see the data for what it is. So I think that is the hardest survival skill, to be honest. I think I might have just summed it up. Okay, episode over. That's it. You could just identify what it is and see it for what it is. It's so hard. Why is that so hard?
Oh my God.
It's so hard. I'm asking a genuine question now.
I was just gonna say, well, now everybody's born. Go live your life. Now you have all the tools. You graduated. Oh my God. Oh my God. Repeat your question. Okay. In all seriousness, question.
Okay. Because going through all of these, and I'll get into cities, I promise, but the data versus, and this is my own this. Okay, I'm challenging myself right now, even because I think the huge migration shift into cities in a way from peace, quiet, space, privacy. We're giving up privacy. Actually, I'll get to that. But our ability to see data and interpret it so quickly that we forget to see it as data. Why do we put our own story overlaid on data? Because I even see this with like I say, challenging myself as well. The city's so bad. Like I'm interpreting that there is some aspect of negativity, but at the end of the day, if the data's there, there's got to be something good about it. I mean, I moved to a populated area for a high-paying job. Like,
I know.
Pros and cons.
Wow, that's hard. I mean, I want to say there must be something biological, when they say like freeze or flight, fight, something, there must be this instinctual of like quick interpret the data and what does that mean? us.
Yeah.
And it's so hard on an individual, like me speaking to myself. I don't even know half the stories I say to myself. Like I was telling Sarah a couple I think like last month or something, I worked with a life coach. I hadn't done so before, because in my mind, a therapist kind of moves around stuff and is poking and prodding, whereas a life coach is like, okay, now we know this stuff. So what do we do with it? And we take action, at least in theory. And so I worked with a life coach, and some of the ways that she interpreted what I was saying to her, it was so interesting, because some of the things I was like, oh, wow, is that really? And then I had to sit back and like think to myself, is that what I'm saying to myself? Is that?
Yeah.
And then I had to check myself, wait, but is that her story? And then and she's trying to help me with my story. Is she putting more stuff in my story that's not in my story? Like, it can really. And so it's interesting then what you were talking about with community and village, and then we make choices based off of our stories of moving to cities and stuff, because it's like, well, is it a self-fulfilling prophecy? Are we just telling our story to ourselves and then we live it out? And then in some way that's a weird pseudo matrix situation, prophecy thing going on? Or do we really have control over our story? We are the creator and are co-creating our own story, and we can, nope, stop, and so it's interesting. And I think for me, it's like, okay, my body, like going back to what I was saying, I do the HIIT workout. I have to honor I am a woman. It's not just that I identify, and this might grate some people, and that's okay. But my physiology, my biology is that of a woman. Okay. And so I'm honoring what my structure already is. And in doing that, it could limit. It's like, oh man, maybe I can't, or I don't want to exercise a certain way during the menstrual period or during the ovulation period. And so it is honoring the instinctual, biological, physiological things. And it's the choice. Okay, maybe some things are outside of my control. Like we were also talking about disasters and all these other things outside environmentally. But then it's also, well, if I can't control all the things, and I can't, then what do I have control over? And how much choice do I want to exert over the things that I do have control over? So I think it's a balance. I mean, I think it's balancing our intrinsicness with the things that are,
Outside.
I mean, yeah, it's like it's balancing what, and again, going back to our purpose, like we both identify as entrepreneurs to a certain extent, and that's the phase that we're in. And it's like, oh, but we can't embody that completely because we have like there are bills to pay, there are things. So it's like we can control certain things. So the choice of how much do we step into something that is natural in us versus something that is thrust upon us, these bills and these obligations. So it's a balance. Like at least my husband and I, we live in, I guess, a suburban area, we can say. It's like a college type town. It's not a full-on city like Washington, D.C., I would say. We have to drive to get to places because we're not that far out there that there's nothing, but we're not so enmeshed in a city that everything is walkable and you have public transportation everywhere. And so we like the middle. I think in life we're kind of moderate and we try to walk the middle ground, but we geographically we also like the middle because we like to have access to the rural area of like, oh wow, we can go to the Shenandoah Mountains and it's closer. And if we want to watch a play or go to the movies, we also have access. So it's the choice of like, okay, this is what our environment is giving us. And yeah. Mm-hmm.
And yeah, the choice of, and it could really change throughout one lifetime too.
Mm-hmm.
That's something my youth and also my fundamentalist upbringing
Mm.
really instilled in me is this. It's almost, I don't know, I think when it first became aware, when the awareness first hit me that this is such a deep aspect of my psyche, it became, shock of it was like, why everything is like a heaven and hell situation to me. And it broke my heart because I realized the conditioning of my decisions were really on like a heaven and hell, like an eternal type of feeling. Like that's how I was connecting to my own decisions. Like it was all or nothing, and the decision was eternal. And also my needs were really externalized, and my validation was so externalized that my decisions that I had to make within myself, which felt like a heaven and hell situation, were quite dependent on external forces. So it was really this catch-22 of unhappiness and like severe anxiety that I couldn't even name as anxiety. And honestly, like just people using the word anxiety was triggering at the time, because I was like, why do you call it my anxiety? You're claiming it. You don't have to claim it. And here I was like wrestling internally with like this huge identity crisis that like was so internalized that I couldn't even understand what my own body was asking of me. And that's something I remember we talked about in our planning of like the survival aspect of, can we even tune in? And that's really what I've been talking about with your internal real estate of, can I even tune in to the data? Like not even your own interpretation of your own data, but can I even tune into what is happening within me? And like I kind of said it earlier, but like, can you be aware of your surroundings and see it clearly without internalizing your own story overlay on top of it? But like, it's so hard to do that just within yourself.
Yes.
And seeing, oh, my heart rate's kicked up. Oh, my hands are hot now. Like, oh, my scalp is tingling. Oh, my leg muscles suddenly became weak, but just my leg muscles. Or, oh, my shoulders are tense right now. Or, oh, I walk into this building and I'm slightly turning to the left, like to protect myself with the right side of my body. Why? We have these little, I worked with, happy belated birthday, by the way, to Paul Linden. Paul Linden was a fantastic martial arts. He turned yesterday or the day before, 80 years old. He's a black belt Aikido instructor, black belt, like 6th degree black belt when Aikido and karate. And he used a lot of most of his martial arts training to help people understand the trauma that's been embodied by their past experiences. And so his stories, because I was a live-in student with him for a month and I've done lots of trainings with him. So I've heard lots of his stories, and he's so odd and quirky and wonderful. But he said he had a client one time who did exactly that. And not just not from moving into a certain building or something, but like for a certain movement, that was her pattern. And it took him watching her do it over and over and over to see, like, you're slightly twisting to I don't remember the direction, or you're slightly turning like this. And it clicked for her in that moment that, oh, that's how I moved when she was beaten by her ex-husband with like an object. And in that moment, she turned just like that. And so her mind, her physiology, her being, her body was protecting her long past when it actually needed to. And it was applying itself. That data was applying itself in moments where she was just trying to do like exercises or something, or just like pick something up or move something. But there was this habituated pattern that she couldn't see or feel. And that as a big question is helping you identify where you actually are. And so because so many people are traumatized, they have issues. At the first episode of this, we shared, like, here's some shit that's happened to us. And the choice to see it is just step one. The choice to acknowledge this is real, this happened, this is real, is just step one. And I've seen deep pain from people who just can't say it. They can't accept the truth And that might be keeping you stuck in that place. And actually, speaking of place, place is one of like the three things that I was synthesizing of like, this is my survival skill that I will impart. And if I could sum it all up into three things, one of them is place and your connection to your place, not just in that moment, like I was describing, but your environment, your household, not just your household, but like where you are physically. Like if you're worried about tsunamis like me, maybe you shouldn't live on the coast. But like that, if you're not worried about it, if you grew up there, like great. I mean, everyone's different. So connecting to your place, choosing, this is where I'm living and I want to live this way. Privacy, I would say I wrote that down as my second one. And it really, going back to the cities thing, I think some of it is that for me is I grew up out in the country, okay, and from an age of no cell phones as children, right? So
yeah,
I still see the world in this lens of private or not private. We are very, very, very used to, especially with AI being just baked into everything now, all of our data not only being seen but interpreted. And here we are, like, I'm putting myself out there. The whole, I mean, if they wanted to copycat me, they could. There's technology out there now. Like, as a teenager, early 20s, deep fakes were the new thing. And they were like, no, they can never replicate faces. It's not that way anymore. Yeah. So that freaks a lot of people out. And I think that's a valid concern because a lot of people need privacy. I think perhaps everybody needs privacy. And some of like the technological addictions in youth, some of it I think is bound up in this externalized identity, which we know we have a language for that. We can identify it, we see it. But my concern is that if that is fully outside of ourselves, if we're plugged into something that has no age, has no timeline, has no form, is really disembodied, we can't have our own place, our own autonomy, our own, this is where my skin meets my environment. And I mean, that's actually, it was a big part of my sinking into my own data and truth when I lived with Paul, actually, was that was just my skin. Like, if you've never meditated so long on your skin, it's like, oh my gosh, like, here I am. And to say that I am a thing that deserves space, I deserve privacy to allow me to process in my own space without creating a hard identity that is then judged and put out in the world. And maybe then when you have a sense of clear identity, you can go out into the world and feel like you can be presented that way. But children without that privacy or sense of self or the language to say, here I am, and to identify those feelings like, oh, I feel this way. Oh, I feel this way. I was just telling Justin the first time I was in Washington, after the retreat I went to, I shadowed a summer camp, and it was Kong Academy. It was a parkour summer camp. And so social emotional learning was a big part of the curriculum, actually, for his school, his program, parkour program, like movement stuff. And because conflict is just a part of working with kids, it's also part of working with adults, but like it's actually baked into the programming on how to resolve conflict with kids, which is interesting, right? With adults, we just walk away and talk shit on each other. But no, with kids, there's a structure. There's like, okay, there's a conflict mediation. There's steps to resolving this. And I was just shadowing. I was not a counselor, but there was an issue, and a kid walked this way, and the little girl started crying and walked off. And they were like, Sarah, can you go help her? And so it was just me and this little girl. She was crying. We were walking around, and I was 26. And I had never heard a child actually say to me, you know, what did she say exactly? I don't remember word for word, but I asked her a question, and she said, I don't want to answer that. I don't even think she said, I need some space. I would like some space, or I would like to stop talking, or I don't want to talk anymore. And I came from a culture where kids didn't have that language. We didn't know how to ask for space. Where our lives were really, really ran by adults.
Yeah.
And parents, not just my parents, but I was raised by, a community, a little village, which is why I'm so curious about villages now, because I'm like, wow, if that's one way to do it, what are the other ways? So I don't know. I think that's part of it. So that's part of the language of privacy. That's part of connecting to place. That's part of like as an adult, if you're in that system of right where I was just talking about, like, oh, we really our kids' lives and we don't listen to them. I just watched a haunted like documentary. Like, yeah, we didn't listen to him because you know how we just don't listen to our kids sometimes, and that was just this kind of given. But going back to data interpretation, if you're in a place where it's just data that you don't listen to kids or elders or whoever, whatever your cultural acceptance thing is, being aware of your place in your life and on the land, in your culture, in your society, your role in your place, and how you are with others around you, and also your access to privacy and yourself and your autonomy and your freedom, and allowing other people the same. And so the third thing I would sum it up with, which I think is a good thing to like tie the bow on, is appreciation. And we were really hitting on this earlier, I think, but appreciating that no matter where you're at, you can express gratitude for all of it.
Yeah.
I mean, even the case of that little kid who had the ghost in his room, but like at some point he was believed, and that could maybe be the one thing of, well, at least I'm grateful for that. I'm grateful to be out. And he did actually in that documentary express gratitude because they removed the ghost, and he was like, the same people have lived there since that happened. And so that's a good sign that like clearly whatever was going on is not there. And you can appreciate gratitude no matter where you're at. And I say that as someone who has trained gratitude so hard that I've seen the other side of it, where it can be a spiritual bypassing technique. You can, and I've been there where I'm just, you know what, I'm just grateful to be here. And then I realize, hold on, this is not good for me. I mean, there's aspects that I'm grateful to be surviving, but I'm not living well. I'm not living well, and I'm not thriving. And the data is still the data. I can be interpreting it as like, God, I'm alive, but still this is not a healthy situation. So
That's right.
Going back, I see this big question of why can't we just live out here? That's such a driver for me in all of this work, is and I think it is to a large degree, and I don't want to make generalizations, but if the city life is stressing you out, you might need more nature in your life. And even if it's just the burbs, like even if you're living in the burbs and there's just not a single native wildflower in sight, like there might be something lacking or missing in a way where reconnecting with a more, I don't want to say natural, because it's almost like, what is natural? But wild, and maybe less curated to hide the death.
Yeah, more space.
Yeah. And I think that's another, like when I see these neighborhoods, that's what I don't see, is like this natural decay. And there's always like, where's your composting pile? Where's your weeds? Where's I don't know. Some people really, really like that, and I'm not dogging on that, but yeah. So that's the lens of the natural survival versus the financial gain, because again, those houses in my world are often seen as commodities, and we live in a time where housing is a commodification that can be invested in, speculated on, and money gained from. So and I challenged myself. I had some anxiety after buying this house, because part of it was that choice for us, is we want to rent out this house someday.
Oh, yeah.
But it was also a hard yes, because we saw these gardens. There's all these established gardens in this little yard here. And it was the perfect yes in the moment, because it was, yes, I think this will be a good investment, but also, yes, the here and now is wonderful. Someone there, the assets of someone else putting in the time to create like a natural environment that I could grow food and resources and medicine from. I mean, we have food and medicine in our backyard. Like, that's not sterile, and that's not clean. There are weeds here. There is compost here. There is life. Going back to, you said early at the very beginning, the system, like this is the system. I think it can be both. As much as I wanted, I had anxiety for like a month after we, because I was like, this isn't like the little eco village dream that my heart and soul wants and needs. This isn't like the big capital W work I feel like I'm put on this earth to do. I feel a piece of shit for buying this house and holding on to it because I want to use it as an investment. And I had such a hard time because I was like, I don't love this house. I don't love it. I don't want to stay here for the rest of my life. So it was this weird like awareness that I don't know, it was confusing because it felt like I was contradicting myself. But the truth is always a paradox, I think. And it can be confusing, but if you can step out of like all that routine, all that status quo, and say, what is real for me, and feel like this is where I am and this is where I'm happy to be. I think the peace, the moment to moment peace is the biggest survival skill. And hopefully tapping into your natural intuition is really the key, because living in the system, that's what I was saying, like the system that we seem so oppressed by is so real and so baked into the way we even see our lives that we forget that there are other systems at play here.
That's right.
That there are natural systems waiting for us to tap into them, because they're happening in everyone's backyards. And you can put all the weed killer down, but that system is bigger than all of us, and it is waiting for us to tap into the power of the seed and the power of the sprout and the power of water and air and wind, creating just by happening in our grass outside, that your world wants to feed you, your environment, your place, wherever you choose to be. Like, what a wild idea that your place is conspiring in your favor to support you and your family and your village. It wants to help. And just like the natural disasters, they also want to come and sweep everything away every once in a while. So like, protect yourself, be real. This is a hard, harsh world, but the system at play to like really support your wild, true, healthy nature, I think it's just going back to those natural laws, like the natural laws are waiting for us to see them. And we will keep playing in our other money systems, creating hungry ghosts. That's what I was thinking of earlier when you're like the never satiated.
Yeah.
I forget who used that. It's like Gabor Mate or someone like that, like the hungry ghosts. And that's like the part of the addiction to that thing that can't be satiated, because we're trying to find it in money and security and stability. And I do hear some immigrant stories. They come here and they're like, oh, like this is the cost. I'm going to bring it up again, probably for like the 5th episode, but that moment in Margin Call, and I remembered, it's Paul Bettany's character when he's in the convertible and the 2008 crisis is about to happen. This is the moment in the story. Margin Call is about the 2008 financial crisis, which if you're a millennial, you're listening to this, you remember, okay, it was probably traumatizing to all of our families. And
that's right.
He says, right, because their financial institution knew the collapse was about to happen, but the public didn't know yet. And he says in this moment, listen to his, young colleague who doesn't know the ways of the world yet.
Right.
And he's like, listen, we exist, meaning the stock market exists, so people can live under the illusion of kings and queens. They can live under the illusion that they can live this way. And I'm telling you, like, the bank owns this building, right? It is weird. It is bizarre that a few pieces of paper and a W-2, a couple W-2s, a little savings account, we didn't save up a ton of money, got us this thing that is the illusion of deep safety in our culture. And that, even that story, that example, homeownership is not safety. W-2s are not safety. These things are not inherent. These systems that we live under that are, I mean, spiritually, if you look at these psychological safety, security, emotional, psychological needs, like that system is I don't want to say oppressing those needs, because it's providing a sense of security. But again, with the paradox thing, like truth is a paradox, it is also holding down your ability to see the other side of the system that is waiting for you to realize that housing debt, college debt, school debt, I mean, the whole money isn't real, time isn't real. Yeah, bullshit. Say that all you want. I'm talking to myself here. But until we can restructure those things to allow more actual money freedom, because I'm so passionate about reorganizing homeownership and financial freedom. And like all like the young millennial Gen Z financial freedom girlies out there, and they're like 19 years old making millions on social media. And it's like, I want to take that awareness and those skills and help people see that we can restructure these systems to become more in line with each other, so that we don't keep chasing financial freedom through the systems of stability that are actively harming us. And I will plug the Regenerative Real Estate podcast, because there's this episode on lending. He essentially there's a lender, a private money lender, who talks about the philanthropy, like the issues of philanthropy, because these corporate institutions that cause social disruption often also have a philanthropic arm to them that kind of like cleans up their own messes. And so it's this interesting thing to be aware of, or try to see. And again, the paradox is there, right? It's just inherent of like, oh, maybe we need the philanthropy, but maybe we also need these structures. But maybe more people can play in the gray area than we think. And if we are less busy and less stressed and more resourced and not so isolated, God. So that's why I'm trying to build villages, so we can all get out of isolation.
For me, I'll just say that all of that made me feel the word trust, and trust of like, the things that we don't know, or the things that we don't have control over, and trust in the mystery, because it's like, why do we have to control everything in our lives or in ourselves? Like, part of it is, I think, a letting go, so that we can rest, so that we can prioritize the things, and be intentional, and trusting ourselves to listen to ourselves, and trusting spirit, or whatever we want to call it. Because I feel like what you just said about the W-2 and the bank and the house, and like all of these things that, and even jobs and, business, like everything is propaganda to a certain extent, to say, if you just do this thing, then everything will be fine. Not accounting for natural disasters, or not accounting for lack of community, not accounting if the land you're on can even nourish you, because do we even know what's in the soil? So It's like, I feel like there's this, at least for me, something that even now, and Sarah knows this, that this was my first official week completely in my business. And I just say that because it was a huge trust fall. It was a huge, like, okay, I did everything I could do financially, systematically, like controlling the things I can control, using the system and the guardrails that I have. And yet, the only thing I can do now is trust that my efforts, my choices, my intentions, my all these things, the things that I've put to death, the things that I've let go of, like all the skills, everything, I trusted my ability up to this point, and all I can do is continue to trust. And trust is so scary because we can't measure it, we can't see it, we can only feel it. Only we know about it. It's not like if I tell Sarah, I'm telling you, I trust myself, I swear, I promise. Like the stories that I'm telling myself, and that, you know, like the data about trust internally, it's and I'm not here telling you all I'm on the other side. Like I'm still in the thick of it. I'm week 2 next week of like, okay, what do I want to do? What do I need to do to work within the system that feels right for me? The internal, the external, the soft, the hard, all the things. And it's that's life. Like that's the aliveness and the survival, but like the thriving of trust. So yeah, I just wanted to say that that's what came for me as you were saying all of that, is like trust. So
Absolutely. And I hear, I was just thinking, like, I feel like, because the practices of trust and safety in community, like, how does that actually look? Like, what are the physical, real things that you're to cultivate that? Because it is a practice, trusting the universe, trusting your plan, trusting that you are even interpreting your environment and your place correctly, quote unquote. Is a practice, and appreciation, expressing gratitude, I think, is one way of practicing trust. And since you've found out that about your shift in life, Raquel, you have expressed appreciation in ways that I'm like, wow, she is like ready. She is so ready for this, because you could see clearly where you were at, and you could see that you could at least pause and take this moment to say, yeah, maybe it's time. And I don't know, you just seem very clear about it. And yeah, just the practice of that. It takes repetition until it's second nature. And so even though you were thrown a curveball, I feel like you were clear and you knew what was going on.
Thank you. Yeah.
Which is the whole point. I was wondering if you wanted to like recap your skills, and I'll recap skills, and yeah, we'll talk about summarizing and wrap it up.
So for me, I did 3 things. I talked about 3 things. One is purpose. So getting clear, getting intentional. If the word purpose feels very lofty and like, then getting intentional, getting clear, getting intuitive, whatever that looks like, in where we are in the season of our life, where we are right now. And if we don't know that, then I put a PS of maybe retracing our steps of, you know, that part about Paramore of like, what are the things that excited you that might excite you, getting curious. The second one is about death, but I called it presence because I was trying to get alliteration. And so death of like letting things go, shedding skin, the transformation, because as we get intentional, it's like, okay, well, if we're going to open up to this thing, then what chapters need to be closed? So that was the second one. And then the last one was prosperity, which could be a skill of managing our nutrients and nourishment if we want to talk about wealth management, but it was intended as more of an outcome of, okay, once you start getting clear, and then once you let things go, then by nature, or like the domino effect, prosperity, wealth, success will come easily or more fluidly, because like all the formula, all the ingredients are being set in such a way that it's optimal for prosperity. So yeah, those are my 3.
Okay, beautiful. And I the P's, the alliteration, I mentioned place, which really I'm thinking of is like, if you can be aware of your place, you can be aware of your purpose. Because rehumanizing survival is this whole theme, and remembering that place is something to be aware of when you're thinking about your emotional survival, but also your physical survival and your connection to the natural cycles of yourself and privacy space too. I mean, that goes back to the city versus country living and technology, and even I don't know, the fear. I think when I think about privacy, it's like the fear of not knowing, of not having my own center. Centeredness and groundedness is kind of related to that, and appreciation, for gratitude, to be aware of wherever you are in this cycle, wherever you are in your life, and just appreciate that it's a journey and we're all getting there.
Yeah.
And that wealth is more than money, because I think that's the biggest thing. I'm actually writing an ebook, I don't know, and about real estate and rewilding real estate, and I think that's my first chapter, and the little sub title is like, how do you redefine wealth in the world's richest, one of the world's richest industries? And I think everyone wants to talk about it, and so hopefully if you're one of those people, let us know, because I think the more people we can bring awareness to that, like, wealth is not just money anymore. It's time for that to die.
That's right. That's right.
So let's do it.
That's right. Well, thanks everyone for joining us or listening again. I mean, I don't know how many times y'all want to listen. Hopefully a lot to these episodes.
Yeah.
This was great. So yeah, we're on to episode 6 in the next one. And we will have all the links in the description for Sarah's website, my website. We have a combined playlist that you all can rock out to, but not necessarily rock out. It's not just rock music, but it's like that you can vibe with.
Yeah,
all the good stuff. And Sarah's ebook, no pressure, but like all the things from our stuff will be there. So
yeah, that'd be great if it's done by the time this is published. So probably not.
Just put pressure on her. No, I'm sorry.
It helps.
Well,
thank you. I've loved this time, and yeah, I hope this conversation has helped you see that you do have the capacity to grow and expand beyond what you think life is all about.
I forgot to do my little heart today.
Well, thank you. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.